DIY hydrangea wreaths are a great way to spruce up your door for the fall, and they're super easy to make. You only need less than $10 in materials, and I got mine at Michael's. I'm sure you can find these materials at any craft store, but I came here for the coupons. I used 24 gauge wire for all my wreaths, so I grabbed that, and I also took a look at the wreath forms. Since I have enough blooms to create a larger wreath, I went ahead and grabbed a 24-inch wreath form. I already grabbed a smaller 18-inch form at the Dollar Tree. They had quite the selection there as well. Of course, it was only $1.25, so that's a cheaper alternative if you want to grab that too. With my coupon, the wreath form was only $2.99, and I went home to gather up the hydrangeas. I grow vanilla strawberry hydrangeas in the front yard of my home, so those are the ones I'm going to be using for the wreath today. My Super Tunia baskets are getting tired, but the hydrangeas are in great condition for wreath making. I have a bucket with a little bit of water in the bottom, and I'm looking for the hydrangeas that are dry to the touch. The ones that sound a little crunchy but not soft. Those are the ones that are in perfect condition to use for the hydrangea wreath. That way I already know that they've begun the drying process, and they'll continue that process and complete it on the wreath form. I'm cutting my stems long right now so they'll fit into my bucket, but you can go ahead and cut yours short if you have a basket or a shorter receptacle that you're putting them in, because eventually we are going to cut the stems down to about 3 or 4 inches to put them on the wreath. Take a listen so you know what you're listening for. That's the right amount of crunch we're looking for, so we know that they're already dry. Now that I've gathered up as many hydrangeas as my bucket will hold, it's time to take them in and prepare them. Also, don't forget to shake out the creepy crawlies. Next, gather your wreath form. This is a 24-inch size. Gather your paddle wire and also your favorite pruners. Also, here's a look at the 16-inch wreath form I bought at Dollar Tree for comparison. First, we'll start by removing all the leaves from each hydrangea. Next, we'll get our pruners and cut each stem to about 3 or 4 inches, whatever you think will fit best on your wreath and that you can hold on to. When attaching my wire to my wreath form, I'm a little extra because I'm always obsessed with if it's secure or not, but you don't have to wrap yours around this many times. Just make sure that you wrap it around enough to be secure, and then I try to make sure it crosses over somewhere to make sure it has a little bit of stability to it. After you attach your wire to your wreath form, make sure to give it a little tug to make sure it's secure, and then we're ready to start adding hydrangeas. Gather a few of your hydrangeas in a bundle. The size of the bundle is totally up to you and the size of your wreath form, and then make sure you take your wire and wrap it around your bundle at least 3 times. For the first bundle, to make sure that it's secure, I wrap it around a few extra times just to make sure it's firmly on that wreath form. And then a few more times just because I have trust issues. But of course, you do not have to be as extra as me, and 3 or 4 times is plenty to keep it secure to your form. After that, we just continue to bundle up hydrangeas and put them on the wreath form and wrap it around about 3 times each time. Again, the bundle size depends on what you like, how full or how loose you want your wreath, but just make sure that you fit them in and rearrange them how you like so you get the look that you want. The most important step, though, is to not cut the wire. Just make sure that you continue to keep the wire intact as you wrap it around each bundle around the wreath, and we will not cut it until the end of the wreath. Keep gathering your bundles and just keep wrapping them down your wreath form, and make sure that that wire is tight. Make sure you keep pulling it to keep your bundles nice and tight on your wreath form. Again, how you bundle and arrange your hydrangea blooms on your wreath is really what determines the look that it gets. Make sure to gather up fuller bundles if you want a more full look for your wreath, and make sure to turn them the way that you want them to look and for the colors that you want to display on your wreath. I was going for a more fall look, and I also wanted to make sure I displayed a lot of the purples and pinks, so I made sure to arrange them that way. How you arrange your bundles is totally up to you, so you get a unique look that's signature to you. Also, when you're outside gathering up your hydrangeas, keep in mind the shape of the wreath that you want to create, so that way you get the correct size blooms. I have a lot of larger blooms on my pinnacle hydrangea that don't really fit into the arrangement, so I made sure to get mostly medium-sized blooms. They're easier to bundle up that give you that full look, but here you see that I'm using one single bloom just because it's large and I was running out of blooms and wanted to make sure that I could use all of them in my arrangement. When creating the look that you want for your wreath, you do have to kind of maneuver the blooms around and switch them out for ones that fit better to get the look that you want to achieve in the end. You see, I was doing a little switching out with my blooms and trying to get the right ones that'll fit on the wreath form. And sometimes the stems do snap since they are fresh. A way to try to avoid so many snaps is to cut your hydrangeas the day before and to keep them in a little bit of water at the bottom of your vase or whatever you're keeping them in so they can dry out a little overnight. Since this is a 24-inch wreath frame, it is quite large, so I did end up having to go out and get a second bucket of hydrangea blooms so I could finish out the wreath and make sure I had enough to give it that nice full look I was looking for. I absolutely love making wreaths out of hydrangeas or even cutting some and bringing them in because they will last all year long. Every year I cut some and bring them in for an arrangement and they last on my dining room table for the entire year. They save really well and they don't shed as much as you would think. Of course, the ones I'm using right now are shedding a lot because I'm manipulating them a lot to get them on the wreath form, but after I hang them on the door, they don't shed at all. When you start getting to the end, it does get a little tight to get them on the wreath form, but just keep going and make sure that they're secure on that form. Just keep fitting them in to get that finished look. They really aren't that hard at all to get onto the wreath form, and the last one is probably the one that will give you the most difficulty. After adding the last bundle of hydrangeas, I make sure that it is secured to the wreath frame, and I make sure that it's going to be the last bundle because I'm going to need to pick one that'll be able to hide the wire underneath but still complete the wreath. Of course, for the last bundle, I wrap it a few extra times just to make sure that it's completely secured to that wreath form because I don't want any of my flowers falling off into my doorway. Although if they do fall off, they're pretty easy to tuck back in, but I just want to make sure they're secure from the start. When choosing the last flower, I make sure to choose a larger one, a more showy one, because I think it's going to be at the top of the door, and that way it can do its job and camouflage that wire and make sure that one is secure, of course, as well. And you already know by now, I'm going to wrap that one a few extra times as well, just because I'm obsessed with making sure it's secure. Again, you don't have to wrap it around as many times and use as much wire as I do, but I'd rather use the wire and make sure it's secure. After the last hydrangea, pull out enough slack on your wire to make sure you have enough to tie it to the wreath form, and then we're going to tie it around in the back to make sure that everything stays secure. Just wrap it around a few times and then make sure you knot it and then just tuck it into the back of the frame. Now, if you've completed all your steps as I told you, then you'll have a beautiful hydrangea wreath ready to hang on your door immediately. I went ahead and hung mine up as it is because remember, it's going to dry on the wreath, so I don't have to worry about that at all. Leave it up for as long as you'd like to enjoy it, and if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like and subscribe for more.